Hey guys, welcome again to another episode of the KB Article. We're super excited today with our guests. But before we get into there, just want to remind you at the KB Article, our mission, our goal is to enhance or optimize the growth and financial well-being of those we serve. So we do that in a number of ways. We bring on good guests like Derek that's going to be joining us here in a minute to tell his story and share his wisdom. We bring on good people that share information that maybe some mistakes they made, mistakes we've made, things that might help you avoid some of the pitfalls that we went through, especially in early years of entrepreneurship. But then other ideas to help you maybe grow and expand a little bit faster the right way. We also do that. Kyle and I are partners in a couple of different businesses, Kinsler Brown and Real CFO Inc. And our primary focus is working in the accounting and tax space, more on a proactive approach to helping individuals, small business owners save money, find where they're leaking maybe in their financial side of their business, and patch that and look for opportunities they can take advantage of in the future to optimize that growth and the impact of that financial well-being on their employees and teams. So that's what we do here. So we're so excited to have you join us, and excited to have Derek Spohn. Did I pronounce that right?
Spohn, Derek, just like John.
Derek Spohn with us today. He's out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I think every other person I talk to anymore is either from Dallas or Salt Lake. I mean, there's like an influx of folks coming into those communities.
Salt Lake's a nice place. It's a nice place. Utah is a beautiful, beautiful state. So
yeah.
Underrated, but it's I don't know. I absolutely love it out there. I mean, it's the best. I mean, I think if you're from Utah, you get kind of used to it. And then when other people, when they go through there, it's just like you see one thing, you go to the next place, and it's just dramatic all over the place. So yeah, I got the pleasure of going through there and spending about a week there in my camper a couple of years ago. And I'll definitely be back there, but it's a good place to call home. And I see you're from there, right, Derek? So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of growing up, kind of how you got to where you're at. I know you spent some time as a Marine. I was in the Army for a couple of years as well. I just wasn't ready for school as well. And then I think it was one of the best things, that I had done in teaching, self-discipline and that sort of thing. And then that kind of got you going, and you talk a little bit about processes and stuff like that. And it's one thing that's one thing the military kind of ingrains in you is those TMs and those FMs, and and if you're lost, I always maintain, if you're lost and you don't know what's going on, just tell me where you're at and what page you're on, and I'll and then go from there, because it really kind of spells out things for you. And I think you kind of you work within the industry that you're in, that you're with Smart Floors, working for commercial property managers and that type of thing. Kind of tell us a little bit about the path that you were on and kind of how you got to where you're at, and it just kind of start from there. Yeah.
Sure. So like you said, born and raised in Utah my whole life. And to answer the question that inevitably comes up in everyone's mind, yes, I was born and raised Mormon in that faith. Not currently active or practicing really any sort of religion other than a belief in something more powerful than myself. I've found a lot of acceptance in not knowing and being okay with that. Right. Just saying, I don't know. Be a good person regardless, right? But yeah, so born and raised in Utah, and like you said, it is beautiful. Definitely take it for granted the more you've been here. It's funny though, because I feel like I'm lucky in that the route I drive from the office to my gym every day after work, there's just this one portion where you swing around on the freeway and you start heading towards the mountains, and it's just like boom, like completely unobstructed view, just those Rocky Mountains, huge in your face. And so even I've been here for 31 years, I still see that and I go, damn, that's pretty cool.
Right.
So yeah, it's a great place to live for sure. It's very entrepreneurial friendly. A lot of colleges here that are very a lot of good programs for people that want to get into business and things like that. And we've got Silicon Slopes, right, as well. We've got Adobe and all these other big guys out here now, and it's a cool place to be for sure. But yeah, so grew up here, did the whole growing up in a very religious family thing, did some religious service, the mission, right? Going out and
Well, that's
spreading the
good.
word and all that. And it's funny you mentioned discipline because I actually got sent home early from that.
Oh, good.
Not very good at it.
Controversial in the faith, you know what I mean? To basically
Yeah.
get kicked out. Nothing too crazy. I think that, it's a very, very rigid lifestyle they have you live when you're doing that. Very strict schedule, very restrictive as far as what activities you are allowed to do and not do during the day. And I definitely was not ready for that. And
And you did that right out of high school, Derek? Was that the
yeah,
case?
yeah, I was kind of in that setup. I was born in August, right? So right on that edge where you can either be the youngest or oldest in your school. So my parents went the oldest route, and so I basically graduated high school, and then that September, 4 or 5 months later, I was already flying out, and I went to Pennsylvania. Cool place, cool people, is interesting. Didn't get to go somewhere cool like Botswana or something, but but yeah, so that was a good experience overall, though. Being sent home is not a thing that I would say is like a bad thing. I joke about it now because it was such a great learning experience for me, and I think it really triggered a lot of self-awareness and
Sure.
realizing, okay, I got shortcomings and I got weaknesses. But so moving on from that, though, I got home and didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I, basically had been taught that, well, you're back from your mission, you're in your young 20s, and in Utah, that means you need to get married and start having kids.
Right.
Right. But so I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Got a little whatever job, dated a little bit, and tried to do some school at the University of Utah. And man, all of those things just kicked my ass. I was not ready for a higher education, pursuing that. A lot of people knock college nowadays, right? And I can see some of their arguments, but at the same time, I think it does still require a certain amount of, hey, you got to be where you got to be, do what you got to do, and accomplish some kind of task, right? So
Right.
there's something to be said for that. And I wasn't ready, and so I
So
did
you
that.
come out of high school, let me get straight. So you come out of high school, you get on the mission thing or whatever, that you do, and it's supposed to do a couple of years, and that didn't go real well for you. You're in the early 20s, go to college where you're paying all this money to go to college, and then you had discovered not really good at that discipline thing, and going forward. So you're just kind of, and I think that's where a lot of people they get in that struggle that time in their life, and you can see that phase when people are going through that, and then you kind of you did a couple of things that are a little different to kind of get you where you're at now. So I'm sorry, I was just kind of
You're good.
I can certainly relate to that, because when people are in their early 20s or whatever it is, they don't know what it is. How do you go to college? And then most people, well, I should say not most people, but a lot of people, they go to school just to figure out where it is that they're supposed to go. So they spend a couple of years, oftentimes just wasting money, and never amounts to anything. And so
I think
from college, Derek.
Say that again.
With the whole schooling thing, I think it's adaptive. Back when I was growing up, I'm 47. I don't know how old you are, Derek, but this whole online thing was just coming to be. We had AOL, like my senior year in high school, and you turned it on. It'd take 10 minutes for it to fire up in your house, like ding, ding, ding,
I am old enough to remember, and I know the sound of you trying to connect, and your sister made a phone call, and it was all ruined.
Yeah, you either had the trades or you had college to learn. I mean, that's really, you go and find a mentor that would teach you, or trades that showed you the way, or you go to college to learn something else. And, anymore, I even tell my kid, because I was pushed to go to college. And I'm glad I did. It's rewarded me. But, I told my kid, it's not necessarily what you need. Depends on what you want to do. And with so many opportunities like YouTube, you can learn more in a week by following some cats out there on YouTube than you can a whole semester, 2 semesters at school. So that's crazy.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think once in my business career have I ever had to worry about calculating the GDP? You know what I mean? It's stuff like that in your economics class. And it's like, great, you know, and there's a lot of smart guys out there, but that doesn't apply to what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So you looked at college, said that's probably not for me. Then what? Is that when you went into the Marines? And
yeah, so I was doing the college thing, wasn't feeling it, wasn't having success, and I don't know what it was. I just had some kind of calling. I think I grew up like any other little boy. I thought fighter jets were cool, Army guys were cool. You know, I grew up hunting around guns a little bit, and so I think really I think I was lost and I was lacking purpose. I didn't have a reason to be, right? I was just floating, and I think that looking at the Marine Corps, I think I saw a purpose. And, you know, I've always had a very all or nothing mentality. And so I thought to myself, well, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do the military thing, what's like the most all in thing you can do? And in my mind, that was the Marine Corps. It was like they're almost this mythical, you know, weird animal that you're like, Army's cool and Navy's cool and fighter, you know, Air Force, I mean, a fighter pilot's awesome, but like you're Marine and you almost don't know what it means, right? All you know what it means, like tough, maybe a little scary, like war fighter, like, but you don't really know. And I think that attracted me because I thought that'll give me some purpose. That gives me a reason, you know, some accomplishment. So I was the weird guy that I just went and walked into a recruiting's office one day and I said, hey, I want to join. And they kind of laughed at me, right? Because that doesn't really happen. Normally, they got to go get kids out of the high school events and job fairs and things like that.
They got to drag them in.
Yeah, so I sat down, and I think I still wanted to go more of an academic route because originally I wanted to go through the ROTC and go through officer candidate school and all that. But the fact with that was that I was not in the physical condition to even pretend to compete. So, you know, bless those recruiters, I wasted their time as they ran me through the physical fitness tests, knowing that I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of qualifying. So they put me through all of that. And I eventually settle on, okay, well, you know, I remember I was at the gym and my recruiter called me and said, hey man, yeah, your scores aren't good enough to get you through the ROTC program, but have you ever thought of joining the reserves? You can still go to school and do that whole thing, right? He gives me that pitch. I said, okay, yeah, I mean, it's basically kind of the same thing, but not the opposite route. And he's like, exactly. You can still join the Marine Corps, be a Marine, but you can still go to school and do all that. And I said, great. We go to sign the papers. And while I'm in the recruiter's office, there's another recruiter there. And he kind of leans in and he's like, so what job did you get? What are you doing? I was like, oh, I just infantry. You know, I just thought I want to kick down doors and, you know, do the thing. Right. And he's like, you don't want to do that. And he talked me out of it and actually said, what you want to do is you want to be a light armored vehicle crewman. Well, I have no idea what that is. So, and that's what he did though. So he shows me some pictures and basically the Marine Corps has these units. It's light armored reconnaissance. It's these vehicles that have like a 25 millimeter cannon. So it's much smaller than a tank. They're wheels instead of tracks. It's kind of like a poor man's Bradley. If you've ever seen a Bradley fighting vehicle, right? The LAVs are poor man's Bradley. It's a smaller gun. There's less guns, less power. This Marine Corps is cheap.
But highly mobile, more mobile, but you don't have the firepower, you know, type of thing.
Correct.
So fast mobility, you know, move in
really
and out.
The recon.
Aggressive fire, right? All that good stuff. Yep. Fun stuff.
So yeah, and it was great. And so he explained that to me as basically you still get to be an infantry Marine, but you also get to have a sweet ride and you're not walking everywhere. So signed up for that. A few months later, I'm in boot camp. My first day of starting boot camp, of meeting my drill instructors and starting that, like, you know, first week of hell, the day that we started was Valentine's Day. And I just remember that was ironic to me, you know, and I'm thinking like, yeah, it's all about the love, right? As I'm just getting destroyed.
It's one of the few days you remember in your whole life where you can, you know, kind of like your firstborn, the day you got married, but the first day of boot camp when you get put on a cattle cars and what they said and how freaking scared you were, you know, it scared the shit out of you. I mean, that's what it does. And like, what the hell? How am I going to survive this thing? So yeah, I hear you. Where was boot camp? Was it in California?
I went to
Or
San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah.
Okay. Pendleton?
Yeah,
Yep.
if you're west of the Mississippi, you go to San Diego, and they make fun of you and call you a Hollywood Marine. But we always fire back at the Paris Island guys because we say, well, you don't even have hills or mountains to hike. We had to hike all over the California mountains, so
Right.
it's fun. But yeah, I mean,
Well,
fast
after
forward
the
a little bit.
reserves, you were in the reserves, and how long were you in there?
6 years.
6.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
And then
for
you
6 years.
what were you doing while you were in the reserves? Were you
Trying to live a normal life. Right before I went into boot camp, I met a girl, and when I got back, we got married pretty quick. And so really, when I was in the reserves, I was still trying to do the typical life thing, still going to school. But now I had some discipline, right? And knew I could do this, still trying to work and do the thing, start a family. Yeah, that was tough, because you're kind of living a dual personalities. You're going to drill and doing the Marine thing, and you've got to be kind of pretty hard nosed, screaming at guys, things like that. And then you got to come back to your wife and be soft, and handle it differently. And so yeah, that was definitely tough. I ended up getting so during that time I started doing construction, just kind of general contracting. I just like an assistant. I was out there swinging a hammer, doing a lot of demo, learned how to frame, hang sheetrock, drywall, paint, all the kind of some basics, right? Good life skills. And I did that for almost 3 years and got real sick of it. And during that time, my best friend got me introduced to this world of self-development, motivation, guys like Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, Alex Hormozy, all these guys. He introduced me to the original MF CEO podcast, right? This is back in 2016, 2017. So
That's not that
even
long.
though I didn't have a business, I was a guy swinging a hammer and things like that. I still listened to Andy religiously. And I think it really helped me mentally get into the next phase and to want more and to do more, because I was coasting. I didn't mind going and doing the construction work. I knew there was a path forward if I just stuck out time, and I was going to coast. But listening to other men talk about purpose in life and drive and success and doing more and having an obligation to be more and to be better, I think really planted that seed. And it just made me more and more dissatisfied with that position in construction. And that's what pushed me to look for something else. And that same friend, back in these 2016 or so, it's kind of when the retail stock trader, right, guy at home with the Robinhood app, all that stuff kind of really started to take off. And he introduced it to me, and I thought, I could do that. I like that. I like talking money and numbers, and I think it's really cool. So we got into that, and it was just a match made in heaven, where on one hand I had these mentors from afar from the podcasts pushing me, driving me, motivating me, saying, do more, be more. And then I now had a goal, right? I'm going to learn stock trading and master that and all this stuff. And eventually I was like, well, I got to get into this. I need to learn more, everything I can about it. And so I started applying and looking for a job where I could get close to this trading world and the finance world. I had one connection through my wife at the time that was part of a fund here in Salt Lake City, a private equity fund, kind of a family office type thing,
Sure.
And it was a really interesting experience because it was a big eye opener for me. I met with the guy that she knew, had a very informal lunch just to make sure I wasn't an idiot, right? Talked to him, told him about trading, all that, he said, okay, great. He's like, honestly, you're more qualified than any of the other interns and, type people we bring in. So I think you'll do great. Let's start it. So we start the interview process. I meet with him officially. I meet with his boss officially. They're great. They're grilling me and I'm wearing a suit, trying to put up the, hey, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. And I get through these multiple rounds of interviews, and the last one is with I believe he was the president of the firm.
Sure.
And so we go into this big office and sit down with him, and he's asking me some questions, and he starts getting into okay, so where are you from? I was like, I was born and raised in Utah. He's like, okay, but where? I'm like, oh, it's just out on the west side, which in Utah, the west side is kind of the middle class, lower middle class, nothing to write home about. And he's like, okay, and where are you going to school? And I was like, I'm putting myself through just Salt Lake Community College right now, getting this degree and just working on it. And he says, is the most bizarre thing, because he looks at me and he says, I'm confused by you because I can tell you're smart. You're very well spoken. You know what you want. You've already obviously studied and learned, and you have a lot of self-taught information and knowledge. He's like, if you're so smart, why don't you go to Harvard, Yale? Why don't you go to one of those schools? And I didn't understand what he was getting at. I was still very naive, and I just told him, I couldn't afford it. I can't pay for that. My parents can't pay for that. There's no way. The reason I'm going to Salt Lake Community College. And he said, okay. He's like, well, tell you what, why don't you go get a job at another firm and call me in a year and we'll see. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, you just said I'm smart. I impressed you.
But you weren't going to Harvard.
You talk to that's at this entry level. Right. But because I didn't have the right pedigree, I wasn't in. Right.
Really?
Weirdest thing. And so
I would have never gotten anywhere if that was the case. I mean, that was like, if they would have thrown me out of, wherever. So with my background and everything.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, I mean, to make a long story short, I applied with E-Trade, walked in, got the job, right? They're like, well, hell yeah, this guy knows what's up. Let's do it. Right. So I worked with them. Rose real quickly into a specialty department, was there about 3 years or so. And that's when Morgan Stanley took them over. And that's when COVID was hitting, and I was miserable because what happened was the government gave everyone free money, right? Sure. So now every Tom, Dick, and Harry thinks that they can go make a bunch of money and become millionaires trading on Robinhood and E-Trade, right? And so all the firms, everyone, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, all of them got absolutely overwhelmed with the now millions of Americans that are stuck at home with a spare $1,000, $2,000 that they think that they can turn it into $200,000, right? And so the amount of calls coming into these firms, 10x. And so they had to take guys like me, where I was at the time, I was on a team that onboarded high net worth clients. And just gave them the white glove experience. And they were pulling us to do basic, just customer service, password resets. I'm explaining what the stock market is to a grandma in Florida, So it just wasn't what I wanted to do, man. I'm thinking, I got my licenses. I worked my ass off. Like, now I'm waking up at 6 a.m. to spend 10 hours just, not really being a stockbroker, but being a call service agent, right?
Right.
So it was a good timing that, the founder of the company that I knew of Smart Floors, that's when he came to me and said, hey, we got this thing going. It's up and running, but we see that, it's got legs, but we don't have the time. They're older men, they're in their 60s, and they didn't want to put in that time anymore. So they would rather put in another couple of years, get it to the point that then maybe I could buy them out or we could sell or do something, right? So we said, why don't you come run it for us? Kind of be our operations guy, help us on the back end.
Did you know anything about flooring, or why did they come to you?
I think the closest thing I knew from flooring came from me having to tear out carpet tiles in office buildings when I did construction.
Oh, yeah.
But I knew the founder, he knew me fairly well. And so he knew my military background, and he knew that I was a broker. And he knew that me personally, on a personal level, that I was at least a responsible enough guy, a sharp enough guy, and just the way that I thought. Okay. And I think that's what he's thinking. Hey, you may not be the next, CEO, whatever, of a multi-million-dollar company kind of a thing, but the very least you can get in here, help us run the office, right? Mm-hmm. So that was what we went in. I started with them, and we just jumped right in with it. And a year later, after my first year with them, we added $1 million in business, and we had hired some more staff, and we're growing. I had policies and procedures in place, and basically the thing was running. And after my second year there, we had added another $1 million to the top line. So we're seeing phenomenal growth for a small business in its first 5 years, right?
Sure.
And at this
You're feeling
point,
good. You're feeling good, right? You
oh
got your
yeah,
purpose
I'm
thinking, you're
feeling
like,
good. You know,
you
we
rolling.
had a little bit of any sort of not feeling good typically came from differences in of how things should be executed between myself and the two owning partners. And it was always this kind of battle. I'd never really been into the politicking much, but there was a lot of those kind of, hey, you know, making up names here. John wants to do this, Greg wants to do that, right? And what do you think? And well, let's do this, and then we'll tell John that. And there's a lot of that going on, and always for the betterment of the business, but it's because there was a conflicting vision at the top.
Right.
One
Sure.
owner is thinking this thing can be a multi-million-dollar, $100 million business. Excuse me. The other owner is thinking, well, I just want to take the profits we're making and put it in my pocket. Right.
Sure.
I want to be able to afford a new Corvette.
So would you say that the owners, they didn't share the vision of the company that well with everybody, or maybe they're at the top that they didn't share the same vision for the organization themselves, and then that kind of created a little bit of a little bit of
Definitely,
lack of functionality within the organization.
Oh, definitely. I think that it was they had their personal visions for the company, but there was no unified vision, and even their personal visions weren't communicated.
Sure.
So it was just that kind of default of, the vision is grow, right? Which can get you so far, but that fizzles out pretty quick.
Did you, when you were as director of operations, did it take you long? You have been listening to Andy Ed podcast, mindset stuff for a while. You know, they talk about core visions, values, and all that. I find it interesting that, you come out of high school, you go on your mission, that didn't work out so well. You come back kind of uncertain about your purpose, passion, whatever you wanted to do. You're trying different things, but until you found a purpose, you were kind of lost.
Completely.
That's the same thing that you're describing in this business. Those owners did not have a purpose, a driving force, anything pushing them in a congruent direction. Now, I think they were just, all right. One may have wanted to grow and make it a big company. The other one wanted to buy the Corvette with the money, but they didn't have alignment. And I'll be honest with you, man, I think Kyle and I have been there. I mean, when we first partnered up, when I first got into business, I needed to pay bills, man. I didn't really have it. I wanted to work for myself and pay the bills.
Right.
And then
survival mode.
Yeah. And then
I think everybody goes through that survival mode period,
Yeah. So there's phases to it. And then Kyle and I partnered several years ago, and we went through some bumps and everything. And we had a vision, but that vision got kind of rocked upside the head with a bat just because of some market changes and the dynamics within the organization that we were tied to at the time changed. So we had to shift vision and say, what do we really want? So it's interesting how the uncertainty early in life, and it's the same thing in business as a leader, right?
Definitely. And it's one thing that's interesting about the vision aspect is that it is so critical and crucial to an organization and an individual. And yet proper execution and understanding the fundamentals of execution are just as important. It's this yin yang, because the next phase of my story is me learning the real hard way that is I did it the wrong way and learned the hard way. So yeah, we're coming out of 2022, crushed the year, but there were red flags. There was red flags in the financials. We had to open up a line of credit to purchase material. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's great, right? Yeah, all businesses get financing, and we're funding growth. And eventually our growth rate will even off and the finances will catch up. And so we just need some bridge capital but we
Sure.
don't want to kill the growth. We don't want to slow ourselves down just because we can't finance it. So that was my mentality. And there was some flaws in that for sure, because I lacked the experience and the understanding of proper execution. And so all I saw was, hey, great year, great growth. Customers are happy, right? Very surface level things.
Mm-hmm.
And we were outgrowing our physical space. We had 2 warehouses on the same lot, but separated. Is just a very not, it was a pain in the ass, honestly, to have 2 buildings you're walking back and forth from all the time. And we just didn't have enough space. We had piles of like little pyramids of carpet rolls and vinyl rolls, to the ceiling, on the walls, everywhere, because that was the inventory we needed to service our current level of business, but we didn't have anywhere to put it. So we kind of had the decision to make of, do we move into a bigger space that's going to have 3 times, 4 times the rent, and go for that? And can we continue and carry on? And we at that point, we would have to have growth just to finance the commitment we were making to the new building. So
what did you do? I mean, it's like, I'm kind of, you're at a good spot there. You're in the crossroads right now. So
it was hard. And, employees, my warehouse guy was pissed because he's like, I can't work in this space, man.
sure.
I got to pull 1 roll of carpet to make some cuts off of it. And I'm moving 15 rolls of carpet out of the way just to get to 1. It was, so we were hitting some constraints there. So, I was always, maybe it's a young guy thing or inexperienced thing, I don't know, but I was go, aggression, dive in and we'll see if there's water in the pool when we get there kind of a guy, I guess. And well, I hit my head pretty hard because we find a space, we move in, we do the whole thing, and it's great. At the same time we're signing leases and moving, we had a saleswoman who, she could get new business like no other. She's fantastic, but she couldn't keep it, which in our business is huge. Retention's everything. We're a reoccurring model, right? We get these properties signed up and they order from us every month. Well, she couldn't keep them happy because she was so disorganized in her personal life. Her personal life was a mess.
Sure.
And, me coming into my first real experience of management, I was trying to be very empathetic, understanding, hey, you're a person, I feel you, take a week off and get your mind right. And I think that, I would still operate with that as a fundamental, but I think I would have also pulled the plug on her faster once I recognized that, we're losing, customers are dropping like flies because they're sick of you. Right. And I tried to have a real conversation with her, sat her down, said, hey, look, let me start off by saying, I want you here. I want you a part of the organization. I want this to work. But there was a clash in personalities between her and I. And the personality was accountability and not wanting to be held accountable. Right. And long story short, she ended up quitting because of it. And
which is probably a good thing, right?
In the grand scheme of things, yes, definitely a good thing. But in the short term, for revenue and paying for this new building we signed a lease on, the worst thing that could happen. Oops. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I'm so optimistic. I'm thinking, well, we'll absorb it. Just because we lost her doesn't necessarily mean we lost customers, right? We'll transfer accounts, and I think we probably retained less than 30% of her accounts. It was a big blow.
Wow.
And but there's a weird trick in our industry is that it's very seasonal and cyclical, in that everyone moves in the summer, right? And so all of our business comes in the summer, and we're typically on a 45-day pay cycle with our customers. So we get this big windfall of money in the fall and winter, right? We do all this business in August, and then it all comes in October. And then so for an October, November, December, we catch up on bills and we have this big cash surplus. Yep. Not really a surplus, but it looks like it, right? And again, naive and inexperienced. I didn't know what I was looking at. And so I thought we were okay. Something, well, I got cash in the bank. We're doing our best to absorb her accounts. My new building is going to facilitate more growth. When I should have been looking at, like, I got to get another rep in here ASAP, get them trained and spun up as fast as I can so we can start driving and getting our revenue numbers back where they need to be. Well, I didn't. So 6 months, fast forward 6 months, this is all 2023 now. We're going into the summer of 2023 and the cash flow is killing us. We don't have enough cash coming in because our revenue dropped and our expenses went up at the same time, right? With this new building. And we even hired some people to, again, in my mind, facilitate growth. I was putting all my emphasis in the wrong places, right? I wasn't putting our money where it was going to make us more money. It was all in support and infrastructure because I was such an operations guy. I wasn't a sales guy or a finance guy, really. And so we're hitting August and it's crushing us, and at this point, we're not able to pay our invoices to our suppliers quickly enough that they're now withholding additional material. And so now we're turning away business. So it's snowballing very quickly that our debt's climbing, our revenue already dropped, and now our customers are starting to, hey, we want to use you guys, you're great, but we got to go somewhere else because I got to get this apartment turned tomorrow. I can't wait a week for you to get material.
Is this the time where you went in and you purchased the business then? You kind of...
Not yet. We had been in talks of, hey, I want to. It was out in the open now, but it was like, we got to figure this out first, I obviously I can't buy this business if everything's trending down. So come August, we have another sales rep who's actually one of the other partner's sons. And basically pretended to work for a month, got his ducks in a row, and then left. And, at that point, every dollar of sales counted, so he wasn't anything huge, but it was still there. So it just made a situation 10 times worse now, right? We just took another blow on our revenue. And now there's even more confusion, right? And we're kind of getting some reputation damage with our customers. They're thinking, oh, they can't service jobs. They don't have the material. People are leaving them. Everything's just looking terrible. And at this point, we're having serious talks about like, what are we going to do? Are we got to close the company? Are we going to let people go? Are we going to, how do we turn this around? Right. And I mean, at this point, I'm doing everything I can to just bring money in because I'm kind of in the mindset of I'll finance my way out of this, right? Thinking if I can get enough money in to hire the sales team and get them spun up, then eventually it's just a matter of time. But I didn't really realize at that point in time, or maybe I didn't want to accept it, that this is not how it works, right?
What was your revelation to turn it around, and when did it? What was the transition to turn things around and kind of get you back for you to come in as owner and then say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to succeed and come out of this. I think that's the lesson that can be learned. Whatever it is, maybe it's the lack of passion, lack of purpose, all that stuff. At some point, we make a decision which way we're going to go. You ultimately made a decision. Hey, I'm going to have an opportunity to go in here, take ownership of this. And I believe in myself enough to take it somewhere else. What was that, and how did that happen?
So going into this fall, we're going into November, coming up on Thanksgiving, right? And one thing I want to preface before we get into the transition is that going back to the vision and culture, no other employees had left at this point, and they knew that we were hurting. The writing's on the wall; they could see it. My right-hand guy, because at this point I was basically acting, kind of in a CEO role, the total operator, and I had my own kind of operations guy, more like a general manager, really running things. And I was talking to him, and he told me multiple times, I'll go down on the ship with you, man. Because I know that if we can turn this around, I believe in you and the vision you've given us. And he's like, and I know that everyone else feels the same. And that gave me a lot of fire to not give up. Right. No matter how bad it was getting, I'm not sleeping, right? I'm at home staring at the ceiling every night, just like, what am I going to do? How am I getting out of this? But knowing that I had people back there that not only relied on me, but actually believed in me, and expressed that, hey, man, I know Derek will fix it. He'll get us out of it. I was like, that's the only thing that kept me going. So Thanksgiving is coming up, and this is where I run into my partner. My now partner, right? He is a gentleman that I wouldn't even call him a family friend because I think I saw him twice in 15 years, you know, but so there's probably 5 levels removed of us knowing each other, but basically remembering that he existed and kind of I didn't want to because so his background in a nutshell, the dude went up through the business consulting life, very successful business consultant, owned his own businesses, defense contracting, incredibly smart, very successful, wealthy guy, right? So I'm thinking, I don't want to bug this guy with my failing business, right? He's gonna laugh at me or he's gonna tell me I'm an idiot or whatever. But at this point, I had no other option.
Right.
So I was able to get I didn't even have his contact info. I was able to get his contact info from some friends of family of friends. And what I did was I knew that he would be in Utah because he actually lives out in Chicago. I knew he would be in Utah over the Thanksgiving holiday. And so leading up to that, I spent probably 8 hours a day for a week putting together my best version of what I thought a pitch deck was for the company, thinking I'm going to come to him and basically like, look, man, I'm going to sell him on the potential, right? I'm going to sell him on the multifamily industry. I'm going to sell him on what we've already proven because up to this point, we had a good track record, right? It was just this completely botched expansion.
Right.
So I put this pitch deck together, this presentation. I get in touch with him. Hey, man, if you could find the time, I would love to talk business with you. Just, let me know. And he's one of the nicest guys in the world. And he said, yeah, sure. Let's see what you got. So he comes into my office and I give him this little presentation, right? I'm showing him our numbers, which, like leading up to this point, kind of shine away from the current situation.
Did you sell him quick or did he have to think about it for a while?
Well, I'll tell you. So we go through this presentation.
We got about 3 minutes left. I don't want to rush you, bro, but we've got about
no problem. I'm around.
We got to wrap pretty quickly.
Sure. So we do this whole thing. I think I'm selling him on the industry, right? Because I'm showing him this many new units came online and each one equates to this much money, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at me and he says, he's like, so what do you want? You want my advice or you want my money?
Both.
You know, those weird moments, where you're thinking, I should say I want your advice. I was like, well, I want both. I was like, because I know I can't do this by myself, man. But at the same time, I know it's going to take money to fix this.
Right.
It's money I don't have and I don't have access to. So he says yes. And now he is my partner, I would say, silent from afar, but more my mentor.
Right.
And what he tells me on a regular basis is, your company was worthless. I never invested in your company. I'm investing in you as a person. Yeah. He's like, because what I saw that day was someone that was willing to do anything, whatever it took. He's like, you looked me in the eye, and when I looked in your eyes, that's when I knew that you would be a worthwhile investment. And so that's hit me. It's hard for me to accept because I hate taking compliments, but I think that at the end of the day, what it is that he invested in me because he saw that at this point in my life, going through, I would say 7-8 years of tough, right? At this point, I was divorced. I'd gone through moving back in with parents at 28 years old, left the finance job to do this flooring thing, took a big pay cut. On paper, I was a loser, right? I thought. But at the same time, I never stopped working on myself, listening to these mentors from afar, all the things. And what I think happened was the original guy from that fund that I applied to, he saw through the whole charade that I had, right? He looked in my eyes. This guy, 8 years prior, he looked in my eyes and saw, yeah, this kid has a lot of want and desire, but it's not there.
But he's not there yet.
He hasn't learned yet. This is not a worthwhile investment. Fast forward 8 years of growth, pain, struggle, beat my head on the wall. And now I'm to the point that I have someone who, he was able to look in my eyes and say, now you're ready. Now you're a worthwhile investment. And it's not even about the business.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and that's huge. You can tell when somebody's fired up about something, even within your organization. You can tell who's in the right seat and who's in the wrong seat just by the passion and the energy they bring to the table. So the fact that you weren't ready, but you found something and purpose that you going to drive and be resilient and relentless in pursuit of it. I mean, you can see that in a person, right? And that's, I guess, for all those listening, the entrepreneurs out there, small business owners, anybody struggling personally, whatever it may be resilient, fight, but find that purpose, right? That's what you need. Kyle, do you have any closing remarks before we wrap up here?
Well, I think I think we're just kind of touching on where we're at. I'd like to know a little bit more about your culture, Derek, and kind of where you're at, because that's where I think it's a lot about being relational. And we just kind of leading up to everything that we had on that is that I think I want to have another conversation with you here, and then maybe we can just kind of bring it from like the last 20 minutes of this thing here and kind of extend it, because I want to go a little bit. I'd like to really go a little bit more in depth on that. And I think a lot of business owners, they have the same thing. And, and just at any present moment, like myself, we're even struggling with sometimes people within the organization. Maybe they're not where they need to be, or they don't resemble who you are, or they don't have that drive or whatever. What do you do with those people? And how do you treat your top 10%, so golden, and kind of keep on growing that organization. And it's just, I think we were just kind of starting to nudge in on that. And I want to know the rest of that, Derek, because I think we can go a lot more in depth. And I think you got a lot to share there. And just fantastic stuff. And fantastic. I would love having you on there, Derek. Let's try to get together again here sometime soon, if you don't mind, maybe within the next month or so, and we'll kind of extend on that. And we'll leave it at that.
We'll reach out here in the next couple of weeks, get something else on the calendar to pick up that culture, that vision piece. I think there's a lot more to it. In the meantime, man, appreciate you dropping knowledge on everybody. I know there's some nuggets that a lot of listeners can pick up from. So, again, we want to thank everybody for listening to the KB article. Do us a solid and share the episode if you got any friends, family going through similar circumstances, or people coworkers, whatever. Share it with them. We're on all major platforms, so we appreciate you. And until next time.
Thank you very much, Derek. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.